My jealous sister tried to ruin my career, so I exposed her secret. I always thought my sister and I were an unbreakable team while sharing a tiny apartment and splitting our daily expenses. We frequently talked about building a successful future together and believed that nothing could ever tear our close bond apart. But looking back, I realized the signs were always there. I was just too blinded by loyalty to see them. It all started when I landed my dream job at a boutique marketing firm in the city. It was the kind of role I had been grinding for all through college, long nights, endless coffee, and zero social life. When I got the official offer letter, my sister Cleo was the first person I called. She screamed, we popped open a cheap bottle of sparkling wine, and she told me how proud she was. But here's the thing. Cleo had been struggling to find her footing for a while as she jumped from one temporary retail gig to another. She was always complaining about her difficult bosses and constantly insisting that the entire world was somehow against her. So, being the supportive sibling, I made a choice that I would come to regret for the rest of my life. I went to my new manager and leveraged the small amount of goodwill I had built during my first month. Through this effort, I managed to secure Cleo an interview for an entry-level administrative role at my current company. I know what you're thinking. Never mix family with business. I get it now. But at the time, I genuinely thought I was throwing her a lifeline. She nailed the interview, mostly because I spent 3 straight nights coaching her on what to say. For the first few weeks, everything was great. We commuted together, grabbed lunch in the cafeteria, and it felt like we were conquering the world. But then, the atmosphere started to shift. It wasn't anything dramatic at first, just subtle, weird moments. I would walk into the break room, and the conversation would suddenly die down. My coworkers would look at me with this strange, distant expression. I didn't think much of it until my quarterly performance review came around. My manager, a woman who had always been incredibly encouraging, sat across from me with a cold, formal look on her face. She closed my file and asked me, point blank, if I was feeling overwhelmed by my workload. I was confused. I told her no, I felt like I was thriving. That was when she dropped a bombshell. She told me she had heard from a reliable source that I was constantly complaining about the company culture and looking for a way out. My jaw literally hit the floor. I asked her where she heard that, but she refused to name names, citing company policy. I left that intense meeting with my heart hammering against my ribs from the pure shock of the situation. I spent the remainder of the afternoon trying to figure out who would stab me in the back like that. The painful truth finally came out in the absolute worst way possible a few days after that stressful meeting. A coworker from the design team, whom I had grown fairly close to, quietly pulled me into an empty conference room. She looked incredibly uncomfortable. She told me that Cleo had been dropping subtle hints during happy hours and lunch breaks. Cleo had been telling people that I was struggling mentally and that I was deeply unhappy with my current position. She even claimed that she was basically doing half of my work just to keep me afloat in the company. I felt like the room was spinning because my own sister was systematically destroying the professional reputation I worked so hard to build. When I got home that night, the confrontation was explosive as I called her out right in the middle of our living room. Instead of denying it or crying or apologizing, Cleo just looked at me with this chilling, vacant expression. She told me that I had always gotten everything handed to me on a silver platter. She said it wasn't fair that I got the better job, the better salary, and the better life, while she was left with the scraps. She actually believed her own lies. She thought that by bringing me down, she would somehow elevate herself. That was the exact moment the sister I thought I knew vanished. I packed my bags that very weekend and moved into a temporary sublet. I couldn't breathe the same air as someone who could look me in the eye and sabotage my livelihood. At work, I had to do serious damage control by sitting down with my manager again to explain everything with absolute transparency. I also showed her my detailed project logs to prove without a doubt that I was doing 100% of my own work. Thankfully, management easily saw through Cleo's act, especially when her own performance started to tank rapidly without my constant guidance and support. She was officially let go just a month later after missing major deadlines and failing to meet her basic job requirements. We haven't spoken since the day I walked out of that apartment. My parents keep calling me, begging me to forgive her, telling me that blood is thicker than water. But honestly, sometimes blood just stains. I lost my sister, but I saved my future, and I am finally learning to be okay with that.